The Chinese do not pay these tariffs. I pay this tariff. My name is Mia Gallison, and I'm the president of the eBoo Corporation. I have 20 employees, and right now we are suffering under the stresses of these tariffs. We're a small business, and we make beautiful, very safe educational products for kids of all learning levels that we've been manufacturing in China for over 30 years. We manufacture there because we have not been able to find manufacturers in the United States that can maintain the safety and quality of the stuff that we have produced. But for every dollar that we give to a factory in China, we are giving dollars and dollars all across our supply chain to Americans for American jobs. We use truckers to pick our stuff up from the port. We use warehouse workers that pick and pack. We have 100 sales reps that go out to little stores on Main Street, your Main Street, and those little stores put our stuff on their shelves and they make money. There are millions of Americans whose livelihoods rely on this vast system of small businesses in this country, and we need help. We cannot afford to bring the stuff that we have produced into our port because 145% tariff have been put on our products. Some of our stuff left the factory when we thought we were going to be paying 20%, and now it's at 145. The Chinese do not pay these tariffs. I pay this tariff. When I bring a container into a port, I pay a tax that goes to the U.S. government. The Chinese have nothing to do with it. We are not punishing the Chinese. We are punishing Americans by taking away their jobs. We've got Christmas coming up, and if our stuff can't come in, we are gone. Large companies that have very deep pockets may be able to survive this Christmas season, but we cannot. I don't believe that the goal of these tariffs was to put small businesses out of business, but this is going to eliminate small businesses in your area, and not just some, but many, on a level that I don't think you can really imagine. And you don't need to believe me. Talk to your neighbors. Ask anybody that's got a small business. And it doesn't just have to be in manufacturing. We are 40% of the U.S. economy, and we are getting killed. We either need a carve-out for small businesses, or we need some sort of exemptions, but we cannot survive this. So please, write to your senators, talk to your congressmen, write to the White House, reach out and contact anybody you possibly can. And if you are a small business, let's get our voices out there, because I'm not seeing us on the news. I'm seeing Tesla, and I'm seeing Mattel, and I'm seeing big companies, but I'm not seeing small people like you and me out there imploring this administration to save our jobs.
Chinese producers are all over social media right now, and they're exposing just who is targeted by Trump's tariffs. And it's not the American consumers, and it's not the Chinese producers. It's actually our international corporations who have sold out American prosperity for their own profits. Let me illustrate. Let's use this example at Nike. Now, these are fictitious numbers just for example, but let's say that Nike buys shoes from this company that manufactures Nike shoes for $10 a Nike shoe, which isn't very far off. Nike turns around and sells that shoe at retail for $100. Here's the interesting part about tariffs. You're not paying tariffs on the retail price. This is not a tax in the classic sense, the way the economists who are bought and paid for are trying to conflate it as. It is a tax on the import. This means with a 25% tariff, Nike's gonna have to pay $2.50 to the US government every time it imports a Nike shoe at $10. So this $2.50 gets remitted to the American government, to American citizens. Now Nike's cost $10 for the shoe, $2.50 for the import tax. This means they're netting $87 per shoe. Now that's net, not profit. There are going to be other costs that are going to have to come from that. But you can see that the increase in cost is $2.50. So let's say that Nike passes the entire cost onto the consumer, even a little more, just because of the fear of tariffs. $103 a shoe now. That is the impact of a 25% tariff. So what the Chinese producers on TikTok are saying, instead of the American consumer buying it for $103, or let's just say that the company Nike eats all $2.50 of the tariff and still sells it for $100, you're way better off over here, paying directly to China, including the tariff, $12.50 a shoe plus shipping. So as you can see, the tariffs are not meant to hurt consumers. They're not meant to hurt China. They don't really affect China at all. They're meant to protect American industry. They're meant to protect Americans from their corporations who will sell them out for a profit. So if you look hard, you'll notice that the people who are screaming about how bad tariffs are for consumers, it's these companies right here.
What Trump did is place tariffs on Chinese imports. By the time the imports get here, China's been paid for the stuff. Maybe they get net 120 terms, right? But in a sense, China has already transacted. The American company who brings the goods in pays the tariffs.
Really?
You're kidding right now.
No, I thought he said he was raising the tariffs by 50 to 100% for Chinese imports.
The tariffs are paid by the company that does the import. So if you want to build a building in the US and you import Chinese steel, you pay China for the steel, you pay the US government the tariff. This is why it's inflationary. Economists have looked at Trump's tariff proposal and said it would make stuff more expensive for Americans by adding the cost of the tariffs to the total cost of production. So that's the way tariffs work. A lot of people don't seem to know how tariffs work, which is sad because this is how people end up getting sucked into Trump's vortex. He says something that sounds good. I'm going to punish China with tariffs.
Yeah.
In this case, that sounds good. Chinese tariffs. They're paid by the American companies.
Wow.
That's why it's so damaging.
That's crazy.
Yeah. Send me this part of the
conversation. No, I will. I genuinely had no idea. I thought China was paying those.
Yep. No, China's not paying them.
Yeah, I thought they were, though.
They're not, yeah.
So why would he do that? I'm confused.
You'd have to ask him.
Who pays the tariffs?
The Chinese government pays the tariff.
No, they don't.
Yes, they do.
Hey,
I'm an importer and exporter for 20 years. When a product comes into the U.S., there's something called a tariff sheet.
Okay.
I, as the buyer of that product, follow U.S. law and pay the tariff. I'm an American citizen, an American taxpayer. I pay that tariff to the U.S. government, and that increase in the cost, I then sell to you for a higher price because I've got to cover that tariff.
Then what about?
What do you say?
Our tariffs are higher when they go overseas as opposed to theirs coming here.
Tariffs are never a zero-sum game. Tariffs are a tool. For example, you might say, you want to sell us your beans.
Yeah.
We are going to give you a low tariff if you buy our corn. But the cost of the tariff is ultimately always borne by the consumer.
Don't you think at the end of the day there may be more competition within the market, the U.S. government?
You're confusing the question. This is not a question of competition. The point we're discussing is who bears the cost of the tariff.
Okay.
I couldn't tell you if it's good policy for the U.S. government to tax beans and for the Chinese government to tariff corn. But what I can absolutely assure you is that a product that comes into the U.S. is paid for by a U.S. company, and the increased cost of that is borne by all of us. I am an importer and exporter. I do it for a living.
Okay. Then what's the alternative if at one point in our country's history was tariffs that paid for our economy?
Tariffs don't pay for your economy.
But they did. We didn't have income taxes before.
That was before we had municipal infrastructure.
Correct. My understanding is that the tariff is lopsided to benefit other countries as opposed to ours. The suggestion is just to bring it up to make it equal.
That's why you have free trade agreements, right? But it doesn't mean that even within the free trade agreement, they are not tariff. If there's one thing you should take away from this extended conversation is that you are always paying the tariff.
You know what? I'm not educated in that. Fair enough.
Yes.
It was a pleasure.
Let's go.
It was a pleasure.
Right?